Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. There always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now, you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here is your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the information on last week's show, How to Stand Out and Save Time on Social Media, informative. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as the podcast posted on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. If there are topics you'd find beneficial or questions you have, please feel free to reach out to me at media@abandp.com. Now, let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Jan Cavelle is an entrepreneur from the UK who has a few decades of running micro and small businesses behind her. She's very familiar with all the challenges that go with that, having started one from the kitchen table when her children were small and she was a single mother, to go on to build that into a multi-million turnover business. Jan has put together her entrepreneurial experiences with her passion for writing a book aimed at helping entrepreneurs to grow their businesses during the big leap of 1 to 10 million. The book is called Scale for Success, and it's out in the UK from Bloomsbury with early July publication in the US and Australia. So Jan, welcome to the show.
Candy, thank you so much for asking me on the show. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm looking forward to this discussion that we're going to have today. But before we get into the questions I have for you, I would love for you to share a little bit more about your background and how you even became interested in the discussion of scaling businesses.
Of course, Candy. Well, I had only had very small businesses to really avoid going out to work type of businesses. Mm-hmm. But when I had my children, I was a single mom, as you so rightly said, and I needed to create a serious future for us all. So it became a whole different ballgame. I wanted to do as much as I could for them and build open up possibilities for them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know virtually anything about scaling a business. Let's be honest. I was thinking, shall I say much? But actually much would be very kind to myself. I really didn't know much at all. So it was a question of trial and error. I was very sales-led, which was lucky. It was the one thing that was very strong in my background. So actually we did get a good growth of orders, but the rest of it proved more than challenging. And so I learned a lot of hard lessons. I did go back when the children were a little bit older and learned from a lot of other entrepreneurs on courses and from their experience and from socializing with high growth entrepreneurs. And I found it absolutely fascinating. I became addicted to the topic. But by that time, of course, I was with my own business and having made a lot of mistakes in a business which was good in some ways, but had shaky foundations in others, which is what happens if you don't plan. But I know we're going to talk about my discoveries of mistakes, which were many along the way as we go. So when I had more time on my hands, I thought, what can I do? I was writing for a business publication over here called Real Business, and I thought, what can I do to help other entrepreneurs? And most of all, it struck me that there were a lot of people I'd come across who were struggling with this particular growth spurt, because it's a huge transformational time, that 1 to 10, give or take, depending on sector, leap of growth. And so I thought perhaps it would be a really good thing to do, to be able to offer other business owners some help to make that leap, which is what the book was all about.
Fabulous. Well, I would love to start talking about, the mistakes that are made. So what would be the first mistake that business owners may be making when they're trying to expand their business?
Well, I think from teaching it, which I have, as I say, my one strength. So let's start off with where I'm very strong, and that's sales. And having done a lot of teaching sales, and I've also been involved in encouraging entrepreneurship over here on all sorts of ways, working for the government and what have you. And I find a lot of other entrepreneurs in early stage sort of startups or whatever come to me and say, I've got this problem with sales because I've got this fabulous business idea, but nobody wants it.
Mm.
And on exploration, you find that actually they think it's a fabulous idea, but nobody does want it.
Right.
And that's not because you thinking it's a fabulous idea, or your friends and family thinking it's a fabulous idea, or even you selling the odd bits to friends and family and people locally that is not the basis on which you can grow sales substantially. And you can even flail around and sell quite a few things in the early stages through sheer determination without that grounding. But in seriousness, I remember I had one entrepreneur who came to me and she said she'd been in business for a year. And, she obviously had a problem with her sales because she had yet to make a sale.
Oh, wow.
Seriously, you've been in
After
business a year and you haven't.
Yes,
but there's nothing wrong. My product is fabulous. And she was not having it. But, if you haven't managed to sell one in a year, there is a market gap between what the market wants and what you're selling.
Right. So how would you tell an entrepreneur to actually determine if that's a good fit? Like, is there a way that they can survey people? Like, what would be the way that they could go about to find out, is my product or service really needed?
It's research. I mean, sometimes you get hit by, a wonderful bolt of lightning of a brainwave thinking, quite often I find actually it's from personal experience, but, you're looking for something and you cannot find it anywhere. And you find that lots of other people have been looking for it too. But, equally, you might see a gap in the market, particularly with new opportunities opening up with the pandemic. I know we've had a lot of tragedy and a lot of business disasters, but there are also new opportunities. You might spot something, or you think you spot something, or, as I say, have a demand yourself. But the only way to affirm that demand is by massive market research, by some hard graft, spending your spare time and your weekends talking to your prospective market online, in person, wherever they go, and asking them and establishing what they actually want, what their pain points are, as the expression goes.
Would there be some market research companies that they might be able to reach out to even do that research for them?
Absolutely. If you've got cash to spare, you can certainly do that. And there are more surveys online, which are cheaper these days, which is wonderful, anything from Survey Monkey onwards. But I think that's a help, but I don't think it's a total substitute, because you can often peel back layers in chat.
Right.
Rather getting to know somebody, but you probably can't by, people will cooperate with yes, no survey, but
Exactly.
they won't necessarily put in the extra of actually, well, yes, that's true, but I was really stuck and much more concerned about this problem.
So now someone knows, like, if their product actually has a demand and they want to, be able to expand their business, what might be the second mistake that they would make?
Absolutely. The second mistake, in my opinion, is to struggle with sales and marketing. Firstly, you've got to make sure that your product is sufficiently different. There are really only 2 points of differential. One is way out there different, and one is price. You can be very cheap, which is fair enough, and that always creates a demand in itself to some extent, but you have to be maybe cheap. But if you're going to be different, you need to be very different. Unfortunately, people have caught on to this now, and they come up with, oh, well, I've got a slightly different logo. I've got, purple on my paintwork or whatever, and that's my point of differential. That's not a point of differential. You have got to be really original and be offering something that people want that they can't get.
Yeah, that's very true. So if someone doesn't quite have their skill for their marketing yet, what would you tell them that they can do to improve their sales skills?
I personally am a fan of sales skills. I know where sales is sort of out of fashion, shall we say, particularly in this country. I don't know how out of fashion it is in the States, but certainly over here, everybody's leaping up and down and going, oh, well, we've got marketing, we don't need sales anymore. Of course, we do. We still need to understand our customers. Business to business sales very definitely needs sales skills. And, yes, some amount can be done on the web, but quite often you still need those sales skills. And I'm a great believer in, if need be, get a side job that's face-to-face sales. Even if it's a market stall for a few weeks, but get some experience actually dealing with customers, because that's the greatest education ever of actually finding out how the customer's mind works. It goes back a little bit to what I was saying about, I've got a great product, so obviously they're going to buy it. The customer isn't, of course, interested in your great product. They're interested in their problem. And only, I think, by going out and dealing face to face with people, you really get your head around that.
Right.
Or quickly get your head around that, but it might dawn on you more slowly in some other way.
Right. So it's more talking about the benefits of your product or service rather than the features of the product or service.
Yes. It's, because it's the emotions that will make people buy every time.
Right. That makes sense. So once they kind of get that part done, so they now know their market and now they've learned some selling skills, what might they be doing wrong after that?
Well, there's always money, which of course comes into, you can survive on a certain amount of sales money, cash flow wise, sometimes depending on your business. It might be that you're generating lots of cash and, you can buy for cash and buy in and sell out, so you don't have a cash flow problem. You might, but for most businesses, you're going to have that issue of cash flow and money.
Right.
And if anything, the pandemic should have taught us is we need a much bigger cash runway than we thought we did.
Right.
Because anything can happen. And while you might be able to make changes, you've got to survive somehow. So I have a friend who promotes business lessons over here, and she teaches wonderful courses, and they always say to people who come on their courses, avoid debt like your most annoying cousin. And I think it's a great line, and I know exactly what they mean, because once you've got a debt, unless you're taking on a big debt, a big debt because you've got a huge tech unicorn coming. The moment you've got a debt around your head, you've got far less room to negotiate.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
So that is difficult.
Especially the personal, debt, or like credit card debt or things like that too, because that definitely puts you in a very bad spot if, things turn. Like, obviously we've learned too that once in a while you need to bring on like a line of credit or something like that too, because you're expanding. Like right now we're talking about potentially expanding your business. So if someone needs to buy equipment or things like that to be able to do that expansion, then that's often kind of a wise decision, even though it's debt, but most debt is not a good idea. For sure.
No, I think not. And I think, if you're talking about machinery and things, for something, for growth funding like that, I think invoice financing of some sort is usually a great option, because at least you keep the debt in line with your growth. Well, you don't have any choice about it because we won't let you do otherwise. So while it's expensive, if you do it short term for a growth spurt, it can be a useful option, rather than going to a bank and mortgaging your house.
That's true. Why don't you explain that in a little bit more detail? Because some people may not understand what you mean about, that of course we've called it here factoring too. I don't know if you've called it, but
No,
factoring your
we do call it
invoices
factoring too.
Mhm.
I've realized as I open my mouth, but of course the system may be entirely different across in America. But over here, the system, and Candy, you will very kindly confirm with what I've said of similarities and differences afterwards, but whereby you make a contract with a particular financing company and you sell them the invoices. The deals vary per company, but essentially you sell them the invoices and they pay you a percentage of the money the moment you raise the invoice, so you don't have to wait for that cash flow problem. And that's your only source of funding. They won't let you borrow from somewhere else. So you can't get into too much trouble, because if you don't do the sales, you don't get any money. So
Right.
it focuses you quite well, but they do charge a whopping great percentage. So you don't want to do it for very long.
Right. Yeah, we've seen that when, sometimes a business just needs that extra little bit of infusion of cash, and they'll do that. And you're right, it can be a bit expensive. But if you're just doing it for, like you said, a short term, then, if it's an ongoing situation, you're giving away a lot of your revenue, because of,
Not a good
those
idea.
fees. But so besides the factoring, though, are there other things you recommend for business owners to improve their cash flow?
Yeah, I think, it's again, sort of speaking about business contacts, I have another one who specializes in procurement. Now, the mere word procurement, he says quite rightly, and his company teaches a lot of it, makes entrepreneurs immediately glaze over. Entrepreneurs don't like what they think of as boring bits of business on the whole. They don't like the systems. They don't like supply chains. It's all tedious. They want to get on and make plans and sell and all that stuff, but they don't want to get bogged down in that. But they are so missing a trick. Actually getting the right supply chain, is essential for your business, whatever your business is. It may be your supply chain of subcontracted people, and it may be your supply chain of goods and services if you're manufacturing or whatever. But you're only as good as your supply chain.
Right.
And it should be a partnership. That's what people overlook. They think it's, oh, well, I'm going to dole out some money, which I wish I didn't have to. And these tiresome people are going to chase me next Thursday for a payment, and altogether we hate them, really. Whereas actually, if you work with your suppliers properly, you should be in it together and building a great future together. And it should be in their best interest to give you the best deals, to help your business, to be a part of your business, and support you in every way they possibly can do. And that's something that a lot of people overlook, is really using their supply chain as a business asset.
That's so true. Business relationships are extremely important in all aspects, not just your customer relationships, but vendors as well. But if someone is starting a business and they don't necessarily know where to go to even kind of get their supply chain in order, like how would you recommend they find those right vendors for them to actually be that supply chain?
It is difficult, of course, when you're starting out, and nobody wants to give you any credit and is not that interested in your business or anything else. So it is a big challenge when you're starting out. But I think local chambers, and I think you do have a similar system in the States. I think networking within your sector and word of mouth, check people out, check their Google reviews. That's what they're there for. Though, of course, bear in mind that people will leap on and give a bad review far quicker than they'll leap on and give a good one, which is where good word of mouth often is much better. But yeah, chambers and word of mouth, I think, are a good place to start, and hopefully, and LinkedIn. You can often get introductions that way through any of those three to somebody who will be open to giving you a helping hand when you're first starting.
Right. I think even people that are in your own industry, sometimes if you don't have a relationship yet, you might be able to develop one that's, someone maybe even as a mentor. But a lot of times people are afraid to go to who they perceive as their competition But often you're serving a different market, especially if you're just starting out, you're probably serving a different market than they are. So they might even be willing to give a few tips.
Definitely, even if they're serving the same market, they may
Mm-hmm.
have complementary strengths. You're absolutely
Mm-hmm.
right. And, people are not necessarily your enemy. They understand that you're in business, they're in business, and, you could be useful to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say don't be wary, because there are sharks out there,
Right.
and they might eat you for breakfast if the opportunity arose, but
Mm-hmm.
equally they can be a source of innate wisdom as well.
Mm-hmm. So once they kind of have that in place too, now they've got their cash, kind of where it needs to be, and they can make some investments in their business, then what might be the fourth mistake that they would make when trying to scale their business?
I think where have we got to? I think probably people is if the biggest mistake that people have with business in many ways, because we all make hiring mistakes,
Yes.
and that can be so detrimental to business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not allowing a really serious priority to finding the right people
Mm-hmm.
is it's so easy to leave it and firefight. And when I've absolutely got to get somebody, I will,
Mm-hmm.
because we think we don't want to spend the money and it's going to take time, and why do it until we're sure? And sure tends to mean when we're actually gone without sleep for the third night running. And you can't find good people like that.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time to find a really good fit with really good skill sets. And you're far better to actually build it into your cash flow
Mm-hmm.
and say to yourself, well, I know I will need somebody by next March. So I'm going to say I may end up finding them early by December. So I'm going to build that extra 3 months salary into my cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't, I've got 3 more months to find them. But, that saves me from a disastrous hire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really important,
Yes.
because it can do so much damage. I've seen wrong people really rip the shreds out of a business.
Mm-hmm. It's hard though. It's, you might even recommend, having somebody else help with a lot of that, because finding the right people, reading resumes, doing interviews, all of that, sometimes, especially if you're a sole owner trying to do everything, wearing like 25 hats, like you said, they might just rush through the process, where if you can have someone else assisting with going through the resumes or doing the phone interviews first or something like that, it can help, because then they're giving you the best candidates and then you can kind of go from there. I mean, that's what I found for me now is working, because I have someone who can assist looking through the things, doing that phone interview, asking for, the references, checking references too. And I can also, check some of the references, but that's been helpful for me.
But again, that's a really good point. Checking references is crucial. And of course, again, if you're firefighting, you think, oh, I will do it, but they can start on Monday. So in they come. And then, 3 months later, you think, if only I'd checked their references. And sure enough, you find that they were booted out for gross misconduct or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely get rid of automate in some way, either a human or sort of an app or whatever. To definitely cut down on the volume of CVs you get, because these days it can be vast, not least partly because of unemployment, but also because, of course, we've got a global talent pool now. So, tech has opened up the world. So if you're advertising a job, you can easily have a applicant, coming in from Sri Lanka or Australia or England or wherever.
Right.
And so you've got the whole world applying for your job. So yeah, it's absolutely panic worthy, and laying down some absolute criteria. They've got to be keyboard fast or tech savvy or speak good English or whatever is vital for your business, that you're allowed to stipulate. It's something that can very easily be cut down, and you do suddenly lose 3/4 of the applicants. Because people apply for jobs that they're not qualified for,
Right.
or they're not willing. They will write to you and say, I know it's a full-time job, but can I do job share and have 2 days a week? And if that doesn't suit your business, however brilliant they are, it's not a good idea to take them on.
Right.
You need the right person for you.
So obviously we were talking how important it is to really, take your time and find the right person, but how do you even make sure that you're hiring the right candidate? Like, do you have like a checklist you could recommend, or what would you tell someone, especially if they've never hired before? How do you know who to hire for that position?
It's something that it's funny when I speak to entrepreneurs. I don't know about you. I find a lot of subjects everybody agrees on, and some subjects people disagree on. And hiring tends to vary as to how much people rely on their gut or not at all in hiring. I think almost inevitably in a small company, you're going to have some sort of chemical reaction to another person face to face as to whether you feel you're going to get on with them. So it's going to play a part. But also, I think it's important to test all the skills you need. Because again, unfortunately, people will say they can do X, Y, and Z when they can't.
That's so true.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't done it myself. But anyway, we'll gloss over that. But it's true. People do. They're desperate for a job, but you can't afford it as a small business. I also think it is worth considering psychometric testing. Which is an expensive investment. But if you're looking for somebody really important that's going to drive your business forward, it does tell you a great deal about how they work. So it can be a worthwhile investment.
Is there a specific one you recommend? Because of course I've heard there's so many of them out there. Is there like one or two that you really highly prefer over others? And if so, like why would that be?
I have to say, I have used two in my time. One is Myers-Briggs, obviously, which is probably the best known. I suppose actually I've used three. Though one is stretching it, but it's jolly useful, so I'll share it with you. Myers-Briggs is great, but it's very complicated, and you almost need a specialist to disentangle it for you. I used one which my HR practice supplied, which often they will do, and they will have a deal on whoever they use, which has its merits because you then have somebody else responsible for the choice. And I also used, for a really simple answer, and this is recommending a different author, but there's an English author called Nigel Risner. And he's written a book called It's a Zoo Out There. And it's very, very simple to use, but it follows in many ways the basic Myers-Briggs, and you will be astounded by how much of an insight it gives you into people's character through 2 or 3 minutes time in an interview. I mean, I nearly always used it. And also it helps you with how to understand the way you deal with them in the same way as Myers-Briggs will. For example, some people will be much more sensitive than others. Some people you just have to throw it in their face, what do you mean? Whereas others you have to go very gently and, be kind to them. And, Myers-Briggs, or even something as simple as the investment of It's a Zoo around here, which is the one I was adding in at the last moment as a bit of inspiration. It might cost you $6 or $7 for the book, but it will give you a lot of insight onto how to communicate with them. And of course, communication is what it's all about.
That's so important. So is there a fifth mistake then that business owners make when they're trying to grow?
Yes, there is. And I think that comes back to something I was saying early on, and that's drifting into growth, which is what I did. Because I was strong sales-wise, I just happily assumed, well, this is great, I'll go on selling. And I didn't realize that there was more to growth than that, that you actually need all those other things. You need the right people. You need the supply chains. et cetera, et cetera. You need systems, boring as they may or may not be.
Mm-hmm.
But you actually have to have a business that is growth suitable and that you prepare, and that takes time. And all the businesses I have seen, and I have seen so many now, who get stuck at this stage, and some of them just get stuck and bounce in that early multi-millions. Some slide back and become lifestyle businesses again, and some just give up ghost and give up altogether. But whichever they do, they've almost certainly got stuck because they haven't strategized and allowed a couple of years of getting ready for the big push of growth. If you want to go bigger, you can only go up to a certain stage with a small group, with you doing a lot of the work, with 2 or 3 people, and after that you're creating an independent entity of which is your business, but it's separate from you, which in itself is hard to take because it's your baby. It's something that actually will stand on its own, have a value on its own, and that might go on without you at some point. But creating that takes time, and you don't want to be trying to run it when it's not ready to be like that. So strategy and planning.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's a really good point too, because a lot of times people just think, oh, if I could just grow, it would be great. But there is, when you're growing too fast and you can't keep up with it, you don't have capacity or, the people or the systems in place or whatever that is. So I think people should be aware, yes, you want to grow, but you don't want to have it like way too big for, what you can really do, or your quality isn't going to be there.
Absolutely. Or your suppliers or whatever, it's okay buying from a local store if you're only doing X turnover. It's not going to be economic if you are going to triple that, or every little bit of it changes. And people, most of all, are your people keen on growing? But kind of going back to the people problem, that's something that so often happens, that actually your original team who find a startup very jolly and not too much pressure and loads of fun, don't want to be part of something huge with lots of systems and very organized. And you've got to either reteam or you're out of sync with the team, which is disaster or whatever. Everything changes. And you can do it with preparation, but don't drift.
So do you have some ideas for people then to better prepare for that growth, and what is maybe a timeline for how long they need to be preparing before the growth actually happens? Is there, information on that you could share?
Definitely. I think the first thing is you actually yourself want to be jolly sure that it's what you want, because you are creating a thing that is separate from you. We tend to all hear that growing our business is a jolly good thing. And so, which is one of the reasons we all fall into this trap of growing them come what may without preparation. But it may not actually suit you. Quite often you may have a really profitable little business, a lovely lifestyle, have a whale of a time working with your friends, and growing is a really bad idea, because it's not going to work very well for you. And why do it if you're happy?
Right.
So, don't swallow hook, line, and sinker the story, but growth is wonderful. Firstly, take a month, a couple of months, whatever, assessing why do I think this is a good idea? What do I want out of it? What's my end game going to be? Because if you're growing something to that sort of size, it's going to be an independent entity. How are you going to get rid of it? If you change your mind, if your life changes,
right?
How are you going to get out of it? Is it going to be sellable? Consider all those facts before you create a monster that hangs around your neck like a dead weight.
Right. And I think really honestly looking at what it's going to take for you to have that business, your time that you're investing in the business. I think there's, always this kind of ideal that like, oh, well, I'm going to have this business, but I can be out and I could be golfing, or I could be doing, and I have this business that runs on its own. But that takes a lot of work to get to that point, and it's not going to happen right away.
No, it very rarely happens actually in a growing business. The
Mm-hmm.
people I know who have successfully created that sort of life are people who have grown a business fast and extremely dedicatedly and sold it, and are
Mm-hmm.
using that sale money to have a well of a time and a well of a life. But not on the whole while you're growing a business. I think that is on the whole a fallacy, whatever people would have you believe, I am afraid. But I know I'm at odds with some people over that,
Right.
because there are a lot of people who make a living of saying it's, of course you can do it and you can have a wonderful life and get terribly rich, but I don't think so that's the case.
Right. Yeah, it's not just a 9 to 5 job either. You're going to
No,
probably dream about it. I do. I have dreams about the business. I think about it
absolutely.
a lot,
Yeah.
so
You live and
just be
breathe it,
prepared.
and
Uh-huh.
you've got to be sure you want to do that. That's part of being sure.
Right.
When it's small enough, you can take the afternoon off and say, come on, it's sunny today, let's all of us toddle off and, we'll make up a time on Saturday morning,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't do that with a big business
Mm-hmm.
or a bigger growing business. You've got commitments and restrictions, and it's almost like the restrictions that you got away from when you stop working for somebody else. You
Right.
take some of those restrictions back again as you grow.
Mm-hmm. So, are there any other strategies or advice that you want to share with someone who's still, after hearing all of this, is still saying, yes, I want to scale my business?
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing I want to do is put anybody off. We
Right.
need businesses to scale. They create
Mm-hmm.
other jobs. It's
Right.
exciting and it's brilliant, and it will give you a fantastic life. As I say, in my experience, a lot of the people who've done it successfully have done it for maybe 10 years and then sold and have a very, very nice life indeed. And lifestyle, or some go on and start something else or invest in
Mm-hmm.
others or whatever. But they have created that home life and freedom and time to spend with their family that they always dreamt of. So you have, with the dedication, wow, do you get rewards? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But be prepared for what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. So I mentioned in your bio that you wrote a book. So can you just tell us a little bit about your book and why you wrote that book?
I did, absolutely. I've written Scale for Success because of what I got to realize that was this common stumbling block of growth, this transition period. And I desperately wanted to get to alert as many people as possible to it, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people realize that. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll sell more, is growth is clever, and without overanalyzing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was the thinking behind it. I had a lot of help, and I was very privileged to work with some amazing entrepreneurs across the world on the book, including some from America. And all of them give their expertise and tell their stories and talk about a particular subject. So the whole thing makes up what one of them kindly referred to as a business MA, but it's in very readable terms because they're
Mm-hmm.
fascinating people. And, I think that hopefully that anybody can dip into it, read the bits that suit them, and get an awful lot out of it, whatever stage their business is at, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully it will also help people think, what are they doing with this planning and growing and the big phase.
Wonderful. So I would love for you to just tell the listeners and how they can get in contact with you, and also where they can find your book and when it becomes available in the United States. I know we said it was July, but just how people can reach out to you.
Absolutely. I would love to hear from anybody who's listening. If you've got a question, don't hesitate to get in touch. My website is jancavelle.co.uk, and my email's on there, but it's also jan@jancavelle.co.uk, so that's pretty simple. I'm on all the usual social media, particularly LinkedIn and Twitter, but I've got a very small presence on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
All of which are easy to find because there are not many Jan Cavelles around. So please get in touch with me, whatever way suits you. Book-wise, it isn't out. It sort of isn't out in the States. It's available in Kindle now, and
Okay.
so you can get it that way. and it's available for pre-order in the States. You can get it through, if you prefer the hardback copy, you can get it through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, through various other outlets, some of which I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I think they're all on my website. But any good bookshop, because Bloomsbury sell to everywhere, any good bookshop should supply you. But for now, Amazon
perfect.
is one of the easiest and most straightforward approaches.
Perfect. I wanted you to go ahead and spell your last name in case anyone wants to find you, but they're not sure how to spell it.
Wise advice. I'm Jan, Jan, and the surname is Cavelle, Cavelle.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I know this was an interesting topic to cover and hopefully very helpful for the listeners. So thank you.
I hope so, Candy. It was a pleasure.
And I want to thank the listeners also for tuning in today. Again, I hope you found this topic interesting and that it answered some questions regarding scaling up a business. If you have any additional questions or comments, be sure to reach out to Jan at any of the links that she shared, or you can send us a message at media@abandp.com. And would you please share our show information with those you know? I'd greatly appreciate your support. I hope you can join us for next week's topic, Drive Success by Doing Good at Work. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. And remember, you can find the podcast posted on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Until next time, have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next Tuesday. Have a terrific week.